would you like to be referred to as the hottest ticket in children's books? Pretty awesome, huh? Hi, I'm Dolly Vasta, and welcome back once again to For Art's Sake. Today we're taping at the Jane Voorhees Zimmerle Art Museum on Rutgers campus in New Brunswick, New Jersey. And two of our very special guests are Jan and Stan Berenstain, author and illustrator of the Berenstain Bears. Later on, we'll be visiting with author and illustrator Wendy and Harry Devlin at their studio. So come on, let's meet with Jan and Stan.
Once in a while, the Bear family, who lived in the big tree house down a sunny dirt road deep in Bear country, got out the family snapshots and looked at them. "What are these?" asked Sister Bear, picking up a book of photos. "I don't think I've ever seen these before." There were pictures of bears playing tennis, canoeing, dancing, and having all sorts of fun. The bears looked like Mama and Papa, only they were younger and thinner. "They're pictures of Papa and me on our honeymoon," said Mama with a smile. "At Grizzly Mountain Lodge," said Papa. "We had a wonderful time." "What's a honeymoon?" asked Brother. "A honeymoon is a special trip couples take when they get married," explained Mama. "Getting married is a very special happening, and celebrating it with a trip is an old custom." "As a matter of fact," said Papa, "we've decided to go on a second honeymoon. We're going back to the same place and play tennis, go canoeing, and have fun. It'll be lovely," said Mama.
Are you really the two of you, Mama and Papa Bear?
We have been asked that many times, and our usual answer is that we decline to answer on the ground that it will incriminate us.
All right.
To some extent, yes.
Yeah, yes.
We think so. Stan's not quite as wild and wacky as Papa Bear, and I'm not quite as calm and wise as Mama Bear.
But don't you know characters are always extensions of yourself anyway?
No question.
Or exaggerations.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Why did you choose the Berenstain Bears instead of the Berenstain Dogs, the Berenstain Cats, or the Berenstain Bunnies?
Well, we didn't choose them. We decided to do bears. Bears are very much a traditional subject of children's books. You know, The Three Bears is a universally popular story. And the second book we did, our editor happened to be Dr. Seuss, a man named Ted Geisel. And our second book was called The Bike Lesson, and when we got the book, he had written on there, he had blurbed it, another adventure of the Berenstain Bears. So it wasn't our idea at all. It was his idea. To name them the Berenstain Bears.
But we did choose bears.
We chose bears because
rather than dogs.
It's so long ago, it's hard to remember. I think we're just being very traditional.
I think we liked we figured they were good animals, stood up, we could make them look like human. We could accentuate their human qualities and also dress them up nicely.
Well, you know, just listening to the two of you, I'm laughing because my next sequence of questions I was thinking of was, how long has your collaboration been going on? And it's very evident by the way you start and finish each other's sentences that it definitely has gone on for a while.
How long, huh?
40-some,
41?
Almost 30, yeah.
No, the whole collaboration.
Oh, the whole
since we were married.
The children's book
and
was
we were
30.
married in 46.
Yeah.
The children's books we've been doing for almost 30 years.
Why did you start doing children's books?
Well, we had two young children who were avid readers, and buying them books made us interested.
Did you think there was a shortage of good children's books?
We thought there was a shortage of funny children's books. And our background was as cartoonists and family humor. And we thought we could do family humor for children.
So you feel that humor, then, is the key to writing successful children's books?
It's the key to the success of our books, and we know that from the children because we get a lot of mail, and more than half the mail says, "We like your books because they are funny," and I believe them. Why would they lie? They're more than just funny, but that's what keeps the kids interested.
I notice that there are, not exactly morals, but little themes that run through each of your books.
They're seen by parents. See, one of the things you have to do in our business is you can wear a creative hat, but you have to wear a business hat too. You have to think about, how do books get bought. Most children's books, especially for young children, are bought by parents, and parents are very attracted to books that they think are going to help them survive. And this line of books that we do about subjects like, you know, a messy room, going to the doctor, going to the dentist, parents are motivated to buy those because they think they'll be helpful. Kids aren't interested in that. They just want to have fun, you know. And so it's a kind of an entertainment slash, you know, benefit strategy, although we didn't plan that. That's post facto analysis.
We'd been there, and we knew young parents need all the help they can get.
We sure did.
Well, so do grandparents,
Yes.
which I can speak concisely about. In fact, I must tell you that in the last 8 years that I have been doing this show, my family, I have to admit, has been totally unimpressed with the majority of my guests, until I mentioned last week that I was doing Stan and Jan Berenstain, and all of a sudden it was like I was meeting the Pope.
Well, people don't think of us
Bless
as...
you.
Yes, thank you, thank you. I also need all that.
The kids don't really think of us as existing. You know, the books are what's important to them. And very often when a parent wants to introduce us to a child, the child really isn't very interested. You know?
No, I think they think they're going to be introduced to the bears.
Yeah.
It happens at our house at Halloween. The very young children will come to the door, and their parents are sitting in the station wagon out on the driveway or something. And when they leave, I remember one child left and going down the steps to the car. He said, "There are people." It was at the bear's house.
Expect to see
but
with
they
little
weren't bears.
bear ears and things
We
like
had
that.
a child
yes.
cry at a school many years ago, and the teacher said, you know, why are you crying? She said, I thought they would be bears.
Do you lecture a lot at schools and libraries?
Not for a long
Not
time.
lately.
No.
Yeah, we tell people as a way of not doing it is you can have either us or you can have the books. We can't do both. And we are productive, and we are interested in keep doing what we're doing. We have done that in the past, but you know, we're getting old and tired, bent and stooped. So we tend to do less and
Quoting a
less.
TV show.
Yeah,
Is he
we wrote.
speaking for both of you, Jan?
Old and tired, yeah.
What kind of comments do parents make to you?
They're extremely generous and kind,
Very
and
nice. We get thanks from them.
yeah, they you know, they are. It's just the delight. They always feel, you know, I know you hear this all the time, but, and they say something nice, and I say, you can never hear enough of wonderful things. There's
And-
nothing wrong with having people
And
like what you do.
some parents comment that the early books, like that Bright and Early book you had there, said, my child learned to read with this book.
That happens.
That kind of thing
Yeah.
with the beginner books.
What about children? What kind of comments do they make?
Well, kids are interesting. Older kids are. I can tell you what they say in mail. We don't, you know, get to see many kids except our own and our own grandchildren, but they say very interesting things in their letters, and we get many, many letters. They analyze what they like about the books rather sophisticatedly. One of the comments that keeps coming up is, we like how you draw the expressions so that we can tell how the bears feel. Kids say girls like Sister Bear and boys like, you know, Brother Bear. That's predictable, and they say, we have a book on not eating too much junk food, and we've got many letters saying, you know, I liked your book and it helped me lose 6 pounds. It's a marvelous thing. You don't anticipate that's going to happen. But the other side of that coin is a kid will say, I like that book because I like junk food, so the lesson doesn't always get across. Or I like your book, The Messy Room, because my room is the messiest room in the world. But they're interesting.
And sometimes children will, up around the age of 8 or 9, will say, I'm too old for your books, but I still like to check them out in the bookstore to see how the bears are doing, or something like that. That's
Right,
always fun.
They start to get this veneer of sophistication,
Yes.
which is such a shame.
Well,
anymore.
we're acting upon one long series of
we've been-
requests. Kids apparently today called slightly longer books with chapters, chapter books, which I hadn't known when I was a kid. But we've gotten hundreds of letters from kids that are getting up to be 8, 9, 10, 11, saying, why don't you do some chapter books? And it was so persistent that we are doing it. We're creating them right now, and they probably will be out fall of '92. And they'll be, instead of being 1,100 words long, they'll be 8,000 or 9,000 words long. They won't have color illustrations. They'll have black and white illustrations. And we're excited. It's a challenge. We're going to do somewhat older subjects. Nothing extravagantly older, but the kind of thing a kid might be interested in at 9, 10, and 11.
I was going to ask you, what do you see for the future of the Berenstain Bears? And you kind of answered it for me, but where would you take this if you had your druthers and, you know?
Well, we pretty much have our druthers. You know, we've been around long enough, and the publisher has figured out that, well, we'll let them do what they want, and nobody's going to be hurt too much. So we pretty much have our druthers, as I say, and we're going to do one of these older books about a girl participating in boys' athletics. We're going to do one of them about the whole business of drugs. We're going to do one about the conflict between the brainy kind of nerd kid and the athletic kid, and I forget what the other one's going to be. Oh, the other one's going to be about, you know, belief in the occult, fortune telling and things like that. Which is, and that's more a comedy. But now we haven't finished them yet, but we've outlined them, and we think they'll work. We're also going to do some younger books. We have a new line coming out. Our main line's called First Time Books, the notion being that they're first time experiences. Tell about the new line.
Well, I think, we want to do some easier, back and do some easy reading books again. And also for young toddlers, really big first experiences that young toddlers have, like going to the supermarket. They don't, before they ever go to a supermarket, they don't know what the experience is going to be like. Give them a little help there. Also the bedtime experience and
going to the hospital
and the family.
We haven't done going to the hospital
but
yet.
That's a,
and we've had many requests.
That's another on the list.
It's on the list. We hate to have anything really awful happen to any of our characters.
So it'll happen to somebody else.
Well, we'll maybe have. No, we have it on the list. Yeah, perhaps Brother Bear will fall out of a tree and maybe break his arm and have to go to the hospital, or at least go through the hospital experience. It's been suggested, and it's certainly a significant subject. We have them go to the doctor, which is not the same thing, but it's related.
How long does it take you to write and illustrate a book?
Well, those are two separate jobs.
Right.
It takes us from idea. Now, these books are only about 1,100 words long, the series that we're talking about. From idea, now up to agreeing on an idea, that can take months of just talking back and forth and dismissing things. About 3 weeks from idea through outline to the manuscript. The illustrations take much, much longer. It could take 2 to 3 months for one book. So the whole job is about, you know, depending on how effective your efforts are, 3 months, 4 months.
Do you discipline yourselves every day?
Not in a conscious sense at all.
No?
No, we like to do it, so we do it.
No.
So I've talked to other authors, and they've said, well, we set from 9 to 12, and then 1 to 5. And I have a friend who's an author who writes murder mysteries.
I think somebody
lives
who
in a
writes,
pizza shop most of the time and writes there.
I think somebody who writes in a what?
Pizza. And a pizza shop, and he writes.
Well, our older son is a writer, and he used to write in a
cafes on the
just so it wouldn't be quite
campus.
as lonely. Yeah.
But see, drawing is different.
Yeah.
Drawing's like, you know, making a shoe. You're making a physical product. It's not quite as enervating. It's physically tiring, but the writing is more, you know, psychologically enervating because you're working in an abstract kind of way.
I have to know this. My husband and I work together from time to time. I won't tell anyone. Do you guys ever argue? Now, come on, you can be truthful.
Well, we don't call it arguing. We call it
We have
violent agreements.
We have vigorous agreements. But seriously, folks, we really have very few differences on this. We've been doing this. See, I think the reason is that we started from scratch. We weren't both established in the field and then sort of tried to blend two different styles. We began from zero. And, you know, it's a kind of a general accretion of cooperation. And without having planned it, we formulated a sort of a systematic approach to who does what. So it becomes, and also it's great to be able to, when you get tired or frustrated, it's a great help to be able to say, hey, I can't work this out, you know, you give it a shot.
It's your turn.
Well, absolutely. It's a back and forth.
That's right.
Yeah, we do that. One of the hardest jobs in these first-time books is getting them down to that short length, compression. And say one of us writes the first one, usually it comes out twice as long as, and you don't want to knock your own good stuff out, so you give it to somebody else.
Right.
And it's you know, it's like a doubles team in tennis.
And it's interesting that we can work on each other's writing as well as drawing.
Yeah.
You can get stuck, you know.
Oh, sure.
Just a fresh
Sometimes
look
the
by
simplest
somebody
thing,
else. keep you going.
What color to make the lettering on a cover? It's so obvious. You do it hundreds of times, and then one day you can't think, nothing works, and the purple and the blue, and you use that. So you go to Jan, or she comes to me and says, and it's very, you know, fresh eye. Maybe you've already thought of the right thing, but it's buried in all the wrong things, and the other person can help. That's an enormous lift.
What a delightful interview with Jan and Stan Berenstain. But as I promised all of you out there earlier, I finally caught up with Wendy and Harry Devlin in their studio. Wendy and Harry, both of you had such successful, separate careers. How did the two of you ever team up?
Well, we've been a team a long time. We met back in Syracuse University, and Harry was art editor of the Humor magazine. I was art editor of the yearbook. And we've been a team ever since. We did get married after school, and I've always done portraits and painted. Never really got into writing stories until, 20 years later, perhaps.
But you did articles for Good Housekeeping and for Ladies' Home Journal and some of the...
I did humorous poetry, and for Good Housekeeping I did about 150 of those. But we really became, I think our children book get together was probably the most successful thing. We've had a lot of fun doing it, and we've been able to put 7 children through college with it.
We did a comic strip before that, though.
We did do a comic strip.
It was 3 years. It was called Rag Mop in some newspapers and Full House in others. It was nationally syndicated, and that was very wearing, though, because I would do it after all my work did the day, and then Wendy would do it after taking care of 7 children all day. And it was demanding because it was every day. Did
you base your characters or your stories on your household?
To a degree. We had a wonderful French poodle at that time, and the poodle emerged as the most popular character, so it was changed from Full House to Rag Mop, which was a black poodle's name. And this was Harry began to have trouble with his back, and he wasn't able to continue the strip. And so we were quite successful with it for 3 years. And then the immense amount of work that it took and several back operations made us curtail that activity.
What happened also was that I had had a very successful career as a magazine illustrator. I had illustrated for the major magazines, fiction and articles and so on. And then in the mid-1950s, that new thing called television came in, and it took about 70% of the advertising dollars. And magazines folded up all over the country. My mainstay, which was Collier's, and I was the editorial cartoonist for it for 8 years, that folded up. I shared that, by the way, with John Fischetti, who later went on to become a Pulitzer Prize-winning cartoonist.
Do you enjoy writing children's books?
Oh, very much so. We find that it's a very natural thing. In a way, I think everyone wants to write a children's book. Or everyone feels that there's a story to tell. It's a great thing to entertain children, and you feel very fortunate to be in the field, because the books, every once in a while someone says, when are you going to write a real book? And we say, well, these are the real books, because we feel that everything the child reads when they're young, they retain. And the book you read last week, I'm sure you don't remember the plot, but the books are with the children all their lives, and we feel very fortunate to be part of it.
Well, you know,
there's one thing about that, though, is that oftentimes people trivialize children's book writing. It's a very difficult and very special genre. I remember one time that Parents Magazine Press suggested to a number of very, very well-known writers that they would like them to produce a children's book for them. Real big names.
People that had bestsellers.
Bestsellers and so on.
I think this was a great experiment for them.
And of the 8 people that they chose, none of them could produce a children's book that was worth dealing with. So Parents Magazine dropped the whole idea and went back to the idea of calling people who had experience writing children's books. People also demean it by coming to us and saying, you know, if ever I could find time, I could write children's books. you know, they don't really understand what a very difficult procedure it is. And
Often
how,
they will have an idea and say, when you write it for me, chances are the author has 50 ideas that they don't have the time to write. So really the hard work is getting down and putting the words together to make it so fascinating that the child can't wait for the next page.
Well, you know, I asked the Berenstains this, so it's only fair to them that I ask you. Do you ever argue when the two of you collaborate on a book? You're giggling, Wendy.
I am, because
it's often asked
it's
question.
often asked. And
Is it?
Well, it's particularly as since some years ago, when all of our friends were retiring, our contemporaries, that is, they would say, "How can you stand having your husband around the house all day? My husband's driving me crazy since he's retired." And so, well, of course, we've been working together for years, and Wendy can answer why we don't have time to quarrel.
Well, and that's exactly it. If you want to get something done, you forget your egos, and to a great degree, there are certain points that you, even with your editor, you will insist upon. But for the most part, you really have to come together and try and respect each other as a critic, but to shorten the arguing and we don't argue. That's the amazing thing. We
Interesting discussions?
That's a very good way to put it.
Well, it's just we throw something up in the air and we think about it, and if we come to two different conclusions on it, we work that out. But it never could be in the form of an argument, because for one thing, Wendy would never let me argue around the children. It was just taboo.
Where do your characters' names come from? The Nobby Boys and Mr. Whiskers and...
You know, it's very difficult to think of where the ideas come from. It can be a bit of whimsy that you put together in your own mind. You can perhaps glean something from a newspaper article, but no one can really, there's kind of a magic that somehow you can put a story together and have a beginning, a great middle part, and have everything solved and a satisfactory ending. That comes into the framework of just plain hard work and knowing
the background for the cranberry stories, of course, was a cranberry bog, and although they are set in New England, the idea for a cranberry bog came from me because I had been a Boy Scout down in a camp in Double Trouble, New Jersey, which is right on the cranberry bog. And I was struck at the time by the independent nature of the people down there. I rather liked them. They were staunch human beings that I admired, and we kept that kind of thing in mind. And Wendy, of course, does almost entirely now all the writing on the children's book. I act as a intermediary editor. And but our first couple of books, we actually worked together on the writing of it. And I have written my own children's books, but they are of a different nature entirely than the kind that Wendy does.
The characters in your illustrations, they're so human, and they're very humorous. And the names, the Nobby Boys. Nobby is a funny word.
Mm-hmm.
It's ridiculous, and sometimes you don't know where you pull these things from.
Whiskers is kind of a
Mr.
funny
Whiskers,
word.
and who knows where that came from. It just suddenly
Well,
was
then we came, old Black Witch said Ratchafratch, and there was a whole generation of kids that grew up saying Ratchafratch to
we
each
get
other.
Ratchafratch letters from all over and on telephone calls. And that seems to be a very favorite thing. Children love nonconformists because they themselves like the freedom once in a while. But we usually present the child as a very sensible, sensitive creature, as though we expect them to act this way, and they may react to the nonconformist. And but they all love old Black Witch, who doesn't behave all the time, and Mr. Whiskers, who's
Sort of a shambling wreck.
yes, he really has a lot.
And Mr. Whiskers,
Problems,
you know, he still smells of clams and so forth. And actually, grandmother is sort of a foil for Mr. Whiskers. She's very, very proper. She is very aware of her social position, and all those things. And her properness acts as a counterpoint to Mr. Whiskers' sometimes rather gross behavior.
Do you feel your stories have, I hate to use the word morals, but themes running through them?
You try and make the characters behave in especially the children, in a very in a very palatable way. You want them to be, you want to put up the, what shall I say, present a wonderful kind of a character that they can emulate. But you're not always, the moral thing is not an obvious thing in our books. In fact,
Subtle.
some of the characters, quite often, as Old Black Witch, some good and some bad. And in a way, maybe this can make children forgive themselves a little bit. Maybe we're all a little good and a little bad. And we don't try not to have a definite moral, but you want a good feeling and a life-affirming kind of a story that will be meaningful.
One of the interesting letters that we had many letters from children, and one of the most interesting letters was from a child who recognized in one of the stories called Old Witch and the Polka Dot Ribbon, Old Witch had stolen the rich lady's cake that she had a baker make, you see. And the child wrote to us and said, "Don't you know 2 wrongs don't make a right?" That kind of took us back a bit.
Well, we were lucky because we had presented her as sometimes she's good, sometimes bad, and we're not going to take any blame for Old Black Witch's problem.
Yes, right on. So what's in the future for your children's books?
We'll probably write more children's books because right now the mainstay of our income was my painting, but our painting, I should say, because Wendy certainly painted a great number of things. But the painting market in this economic climate is so bad that I unless there's a turnaround or something, I think I'm going to spend more time illustrating children's books.
Painting somehow suffers the most in a recession or depression.
I want to thank the two of you so much. It's been such fun visiting with you here at your studio.
It went
Well, we've
marvelously
enjoyed it
fast,
too.
which means we've enjoyed it. Thank
did.
you very much, Dolly.
Thank you for coming.
Well, it has been a very exciting day, but our time has run out. I hope all of you out there have had as much fun as I have had. My thanks to the folks at the Zimmerli, the Berenstains, and the Devlins, and to all of you out there. Take care, and I'll see you again next month.